So today we are going to discuss lambda functions or simply lambdas functions, or you can say lambdas. Another name for these functions is anonymous anonymous functions. So normally what you do is, if you have to define any function, let's suppose you are making a function. Here I have defined a simple function of square. You will get input from user using int and input function. We will run this. So here we have input. Okay, give any number and your function will compute its square. Now what I am going to do is, I am going to define the same function like this. Now its equivalent lambda function would be, see, equivalent lambda function of about square function is variable, because it's returning some variable, equal to lambda keyword, variable equal to variable raised to power 2. And how we call the lambda function? As we call the normal function. Now see the difference. Here you haven't given any name to the function. See, def keyword defines the function. So Kyle is the function name. Here lambda defines the lambda function, but we have no name of this function. But instead of it, what we have is an expression. What we have is an expression. So this expression will be evaluated from the right hand side, and the result will be put into the left hand. And this will return the n, and the value will go into square. Since just to save our another line, we are calling this function inside the print function. Okay. Now let's say I'm triple quoting the above normal function so as to make it as comments or the dead code. Let's run the lambda function. Alright, because I have already sent value 5 in here. See, since it has no name, that is why it's called an anonymous function. Get it? What it does is it simplifies our functional programming. The concept of lambdas is taken from the maths and physics. There are lambda expressions in mathematics. That's why what they have taken and redefined it here in the Python program and implemented here. Now let's see something about the lambda function. First let's Now, Python lambda functions are anonymous functions, means that the function is without a name. As we already know that the def keyword is used to define a normal function in Python. Similarly, the lambda keyword is used to define anonymous functions in Python, or you can say lambda function. Now, what is the syntax of the lambda function? It's lambda, any variable argument, and then expression. Okay. Now, the arguments or the variables and the expression is separated by colon here. Now, see how simple this function is. See. Again, triple quoting this. So let's make a normal function of uh, let's say you have to say which number is largest. Okay, so we will define a function like this. It will get two arguments, let's say n1 comma n2. Inside I am using if n1 is greater than n2, I will say return n1. All right. Else return n2, isn't it? I'm going to call a function get two numbers, or simply I'm giving arguments here. Print large and comma 20. This is our normal function here. Now its equivalent lambda function will be, let's run this first. Let's see what we get as a print result here is 20. Now if you have to write its equivalent lambda function, just push that in. See if I'm using some another statement getting input from the user of two numbers, then using the variables for return, then printing those variables. So obviously this code is around 10 lines. Let's use the triple quote here. This is the lambda function understood. See, lambda keyword, arguments, how many? Two, then colon, then expression. What it means is return x if x is greater than y, else y. Now the result will go into the max variable max, and we are calling the max directly. See, we have no way to call a lambda function. We have no way to call a lambda function except the equivalent expression which is it has evaluated and finally put into some variable. See, we are calling max here, isn't it? Because our whole lambda expression isn't this variable. So let's run this. So it is just one line of code. Okay, let's do like this. All right. Let's put it in print statement. Or you can do same as what we were already doing in the normal functions, the return value must be put into some another variable. Like this, m equal to max of 4 comma 6. All right. Now moving forward, let's discuss something here. So it's simply a keyword in Python. It's used to define functions, more specifically anonymous functions, and such functions are known as lambda functions or lambda expressions. If you see here, it doesn't look like a function, it looks like an expression. That's why these are also called lambda expressions. Now let's say what if I ask you to write a function to do something. So you can, give its equivalent lambda expression, isn't it? Now there is another thing about the lambda expression. Uh, it's also often used to create function wrappers such as Python decorators. For example, let's see what it is. The transform function takes in a number and returns the lambda expression. Lambda function further adds two numbers and this. The limitation of the lambda functions is that they have any number of arguments but only one expression. The limitation is only one expression. There may arise a situation where we need to write more than one expression. So for that we will use the simple functions. But in case we need only one expression, we will use lambda functions would be better than the normal functions. Lambda functions are mainly used with the map functions as in-place functions. So let's move on to the map function. I will tell you what is in-place. The in-place word is taken from the algorithms. This is an algorithmic term. Okay. Now simply you have found the last example was you are carrying a simple one, you are carrying one number, isn't it? Now let's say you have to scare a list of numbers, more than one number, a list of numbers. So what we will be doing is the normal function would be, first of all, let's discuss with this map function here. Let's move on to map. These three are important: lambda, map, and filter. लैम्डा का आपको मैंने एग्जांपल बताया. We will be moving on to the map. Now the question is, what if we need the squares of a list of the numbers? What we will do is, normally what we will do is we will define a list which is an empty list. We are giving it a name of squares. So I'm using the for loop. You can also say for I in a range of this I square, I squared 1 to 10, step count 2, okay, or step count 1, whatever. So print squares. So obviously it will give me the square of 1, square of 3, square of 5, square of 7, and square of 9. Let me use this. So I have used the hash sign to comment it. Now it's going to run here. All right.
There are some interpretation, 5, 7, 9.
See how list dot append list dot append function. The this function is used in rather it's not a function. We can say it's a method. We can say it's a method because you are using squares, the squares list. I mean the objects list object to access the append function, and then you are going append method, and then you are giving the arguments here. Now the arguments in the range of this multiple arguments. Now it will take a number, square it, and put it into the append means add at last. Since the list is empty, this is empty, and it will append. Okay. Then it's going to print the squares. While when I am coming out of the loop, we are printing the whole list. That was obviously pretty simple. Our loop here iterates 1 to 10 with the step count of 2, isn't it? And appends the square of each number to the squares list. The, now, the approach shown above can be improved. We can improve this one using the list comprehension. Okay. But in that too, we will be using loop. But there's a faster way of doing this using map function. Using
Map.
map function. Now we will be using map function. So it will be done like this. What is it? No.
91.
Yes. So what we are doing is
एक बार वो, 2 बार function है, एक बार।
we are simply defining a function here. Define scar function. Now what we are using is map function. Inside the map function, we are giving two arguments. Number one, a function. Map is some function, square function here with some iterable. What's iterable? Iterable is nothing but what you can traverse index by index, number by number. Iterable, your list is iterable, your set is iterable, your tuple is iterable, your dictionary is iterable. Loops are iterable. But again, you see, even the range argument is a function, isn't it? So we are mapping two functions. We are mapping
Two.
two functions here. So it will be one-to-one correspondence here. A number will be taken and given to the square function. Another number will be taken given to the square function. It will map argument by argument. Map this with this. So finally, we are printing the squares. Alright,
हाँ.
it did the same thing with map function. Now you see how we done the list comprehension using list as a loop. लिस्ट तो किया था हमने
हाँ.
ना? हाँ.
कंप्लेंट.
Okay, let's see. So I have some list, previous list here. I have new list which is empty. Then I am printing the previous list. Then what I have to do, I have to take elements from the previous list and copy it into the new list. How I am going to achieve that? For I in previous list. For I in
Previous.
new list dot append. New list is empty. Empty list
Hmm.
appends I in new list. So of course I is the index which will traverse the previous list element by element, isn't it? So element by element it will append each element into the new list. Of course I will run from start to end because we are seeing for I in previous list. For I in previous list. Previous list is list object. So we have no problem using for I in previous list, isn't it? So it will append just like we did in the earlier example, scas. Append.
Hmm.
Okay. New list dot append of I. Now print new list here. What is detected? Okay. Previous list is this.
Hmm.
New list which was empty. Using for loop and append method, we have filled the new list with the elements of the previous list. Now what is list comprehension? Comprehension. Let's see what's list comprehension. Now first let me print the old list. Print OLDLIS old list. We are going to triple quote the above. See here it uses loop in this example. In this example, we used loop. Old list is here. I'm printing the old list. Now I have some list and list. What I'm doing directly is, you see, these are the square brackets, isn't it? Just like we use for the list. Now see what I'm directly using for loop inside the list. For I in old list, just like for I in previous list.
हाँ.
For I in old
Old.
list. But before using this loop, I am using some index. I'm using some
Index.
what for? So that they will go into the new list. So I'm using the list as a loop.
हाँ.
I'm using list as a
Loop.
so that is why it's called list comprehension, isn't it? करना कुछ नहीं है. स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट्स ऑफ द लिस्ट उसके अंदर फॉर लूप लगाओ फॉर आई इन समथिंग जो भी है लिस्ट का नाम वट एवर इटरेबल इज. But before using for loop, use some index variable, argument, some variable. So it will put each list into the n list, and we are printing n list. See, it will run as it was same as earlier,
हाँ.
isn't it?
Hmm.
List के अंदर loop लगाना. That's called list comprehension. So it has made our code a little bit shorter and simpler. So here, of course, in the map function, what we are doing is we are giving two functions as arguments. Range is itself a function, scale is of course a function. The general syntax of a map function is the first argument is function, second is iterable. Iterable. So you can give square list, square tuple, square set, square range. Okay, and print list to squares. It will do the same function as above, but it's much faster than this. Why? Because here you are using object, you are calling again and again append function inside the loop. So it's called many times. It looks simpler just by coding lines, but inside the complexity increases as far as the time complexity is concerned. Here we are using simply a function and we are using two arguments and it will generate the result. Same as above. Sorry, same as above. Here we have used general loop. Then inside the loop we have used append function, just like in the list comprehension example. And here we are not using any loop here. We are not using.
And
By the way, loops are costlier when it comes to time.
hmm.
They are simpler for us. They are simpler for.
But not for
Okay.
programmers.
But we have no other choice but to use loops.
Hmm.
Now another use of the map function is, let's say, is the description of the above program. The square function returns the square of any number. The map function takes in the square function and range as arguments. It applies to the square function on a given range, which returns a map object and is later converted into list. Since it returns map object, that is why we are using print list of squares. In the above example, we are not using list of squares. Here it return is map object. That's why we have to convert that into the list object. Now see. Now the same function can be written in the lambda way. So how we are going to use it in the lambda way? Like this. You see, even though the second method is much simpler than this, but still it's little bit complex because we are also using functions. So here squares will be sqrs will be list of, map of. Now forget about these two terms. Let's see the lambda function first. This is our lambda function. Lambda keyword, variable argument, expression. So what is the expression? Expression is this. Expression is only this. But we have used comma and then range function. So the lambda expression and the range function or iterable because it iterates from 1 to 10 with a step count of 2. We have used the lambda function and iterable range iterable in map function because map takes two arguments, function and iterable. So we have given it the lambda function and iterable. All right. So what will it do? It will take each number and square it, square it, square it, square it, square it. Now since the map function returns map object, we have to convert that map object into the list object. Since the map function returns map object, we have to convert that into the list object. That's why I have put list function in front of the map function. Function evaluates from inside to outside. There are three functions, one after the other: list, map, lambda. Since lambda itself and the range itself are two arguments for the map function, isn't it? Lambda expression will be evaluated based on arguments from here. Okay. Map function will give the result. It will do its job and give the result. But that will be the map object. We want list. That's why I have put list keyword in front of it. Or list function. So it will give it as a list and put it into the squares and I have printed square. Now if I had not used the list function here, I would have to mention it here. One and the same thing. Isn't it? चाहे यहाँ पे लिखो या यहाँ पे लिखो, हमने अब एक ही स्टेटमेंट में इसको बंडल कर दिया. So let's see. So we will have three print statements. This, this, and this. So this was very simple, isn't it? This was the function of the anonymous or lambda functions. Now let's copy this.
और वो वाला जिसमें काफी
Comprehension.
कंप्लेंट था और जिसमें थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट किया हुआ
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
था